I'm not actually studied the growth plan, but my views on housing is that we're a country that's overpopulated, we're becoming increasingly, we've got more and more immigrants, we've also got to house both our children and also immigrants as well. So I believe that we need to build less houses and we need to cut immigration. That's my opinion on it. The homeless.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Has housing become a moral matter? Yes, because we need to make sure that everybody has a decent home to live in. I think that's a central imperative of any government, to make sure that we do that. In terms of the growth plan, can the town cope with what's proposed? Well, if anybody was trying to drive through Newark today, it's not coping at the moment. There needs to be a radical rethink of the infrastructure. That will need money, it will need investment, and whoever your MP is needs to make sure that they're campaigning to get the investment, to make sure that we have the roads, the rail and the other services that work, so that Newark doesn't get gridlocked in the way that it was today.
The reason the houses have become so much more expensive, house prices graph, sort of potters along like that, and has shot up in the last 20, 30 years. And the reason is that banks create money on their computers at no effort to them, and they lend it to people borrowing money to buy houses. And then if they can't pay up, they take the house off them, even though the money that they were lent was just funny money created on a computer, and it's a very unjust system. And the main thing about houses, the main thing about putting the banks right, is that they create this huge amount of money to lend to people borrowing money to buy houses, which inflates the house price. And it used to be, about 20 years ago, the house was 2 to 3 times an annual salary. It's now about 6. And that's a very big problem to be dealt with.
Specifically on the Newark growth plan, I think we've seen some great improvements here in Newark with the A46. There haven't been enough infrastructure improvements, and I think people are dying to see the ring road improved as well. Newark's the fastest growing area in Nottinghamshire at the moment. And, it's not good enough, David, for you to say that people need an improvement in infrastructure here when your government cut capital spending in 2010 when it took control. And I know you'll get up and say that the world didn't start in 2010, but that was what your government did. That was what your Deputy Prime Minister did, letting down, the people here in Newark. And, specifically on the matter of housing, let me just say, it hasn't become a moral issue. It's always been a moral issue. For people of my generation who want to do what many other generations have done, afford their own home or even rent their own home, they're struggling at the moment. And this government hasn't got an answer for them. The Labour Party's got a clear answer. It would help on rent in terms of assuring long-term tenancies rather than short-term tenancies, and it would build 200,000 homes. The problem with housing is not just a supply issue, it's a demand issue as well, and we've got to build more homes.
I think there's several points to the question. So, can a decent home contribute to a stable family? Of course it does. Everyone has a right to a living wage that will actually enable them to live a decent life and be able to afford to buy a decent housing for whatever needs they have. But it's not always buying a house. That we need more houses that people can rent. We need more social housing. It is a moral matter. Everybody deserves that, and the growth plan, again, because everybody deserves a house, we have to accommodate the growth plan. It's not an option to say we're not going to build those houses, because we do need the housing for people to have. But it's not always a case of actually buying a house. Renting a house is just as relevant and often a better solution for people.
Well, yes, housing's always been a moral issue. It's not just as house prices have risen in the last 20 years. It's been a moral issue for generations. Everybody deserves the right to live and to grow up, bring up their children in good quality accommodation. One of the issues in Newark, which I've seen as you go out canvassing, of course, is the number of empty homes in the town and in some of the neighbouring towns. That's something that I'd like to work with the council to tackle. Specifically on the growth point, Of course, we do need to build more homes. I think we all agree that, but we need to build them both in a sensitive way that protects the character of the town, the villages, the neighbouring areas, and we also got to get the infrastructure right. It isn't right today. That's something I've already been trying to work on as a candidate, whether it's at Fernwood, where we see poor quality infrastructure, management charges that aren't really appropriate for the residents who are moving in there. The Southern Relief Road that we've mentioned earlier, that's something that's really important for the town. I've already taken the Transport Minister, Patrick McLaughlin, to see that route. I'd like to work on that in the months to come. Railways, we've seen some interesting and I think transformational proposals on the Lincoln, Newark, Nottingham line. Infrastructure is key. If we get that right, people will be comfortable with building those new homes for the future.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, little did I think at an occasion like this that I would find myself agreeing with the Revolutionary Socialist Workers' Party. But when he says that immigration has an impact on housing, that is a plain statement of fact, and there is no point, sir, in you shaking your head. If you have 250,000 people coming to this country, net immigration, and they want houses, that creates housing demand, which we are currently unable to fulfill. And compare the numbers, 250,000 net immigrants, and people are telling us that we need 200,000 houses. Well, if the immigrants live 2.5 persons to a house, that's half of those houses gone already. I disagree with our common good candidate here who's telling us it's all the fault of the banks and the money supply. It is the fault not of the money supply, it's the fault of the housing supply. And I'm very concerned about the Help to Buy scheme at the moment, which is increasing the ability of people to buy, but not increasing the supply of houses, and therefore is forcing prices up. I agree with Robert here that we need to look at empty houses. I think we have to look very carefully also at brownfield sites. But we in UKIP believe that major housing development should be subject to local referenda so that the developers would be obliged to negotiate with local people so as to provide the sort of benefits and the sort of scale and the sort of design that would actually persuade local people to accept housing developments. We have to have local input.
Everybody along here has made good points. I find myself agreeing with Roger Helmer, the UKIP candidate, which I'm very surprised about. About the Help to Buy scheme, I think the Help to Buy scheme is a disaster. Interestingly, the Conservatives are going to review it after the next election, not before the next election. I think it's fueling house price inflation and could finish up creating serious problems further on when people can't afford to pay the mortgages they're taking out now. I would also agree with Michael's point about rents. I think we need serious rent controls in this country. It's no good if people are just paying more and more in rents. It sucks money out of the economy. They have less money to pay in the shops, less money to buy things with, all the things that we need to keep our town centres vibrant. If people are paying more money out in the mortgages and in their rents, then that money then can't come into the local economy to be spent in the shops, to buy cars, to decorate those houses that we need to keep our local economies vibrant. And I think that's critical. On the growth point, there are 18,000 people going to be additional people going to be living in Newark in the future. That's an enormous amount of people. All of these people have talked about infrastructure and they've talked about roads and railways. They haven't talked about the two big issues in Newark, which is the schools and the hospitals. And I'm sure we're going to come on to them.
In my opinion, instead of building more houses, we should build more birth control clinics because as far as I'm concerned, there's too many people in this country, there's too many people in this world. And if the leader of the Roman Catholic Church is serious about tackling poverty, homelessness and the destruction of the environment, he would relax his opposition to birth control and the use of condoms. Thank you.